Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. In the wake of the bombshell revelations confirming once and for all the abject dishonesty of Fox News, some Democrats in Congress are now demanding action. Today, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer penned a letter urging Fox executives to protect American democracy against the forces that would seek to destroy it.
They need to stop giving a platform to dangerous and entirely unfounded conspiracy theories that eat at the wellspring of our democracy. And they need to admit on the air that they were wrong to engage in such negligent and destructive behavior.
Now, that letter from Schumer and Jeffries follows two explosive court filings in which Dominion Voting Systems demonstrates over and over again that Fox knew the conspiracy theories they broadcast on their air after the 2020 election were all lies, but they aired them anyway to keep Donald Trump, to keep their viewers, and to make money. So far, these revelations haven't swayed Fox from spreading wildly offensive and dangerous ideas. In fact, just last night, they gave airtime to Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene to promote her proposal for what she is calling a, quote, national divorce that would amount to essentially the dissolution of the union.
What I'm talking about is reducing the size of our federal government and giving more power and control to our states to be the identity that they want to be, whether it's blue or red, because the division in our country has gotten to a dangerous point. We are fed up. We're fed up with Democrat policies. We're fed up with the woke ideology being shoved down our throat, and we're tired of our children being brainwashed into these same ideas. We want our own safe space, and we deserve it.
We want our own safe space. That's a real rallying cry for the 21st century American MAGA right. We want our safe space, and maybe we should get rid of the union. Now, you might think that basically calling for the end of the union, I can't believe I'm saying that phrase, basically calling for the end of the union is probably a bit too far, even for Fox, but we've seen this trajectory before, again and again and again, right? This is how it goes. They may be skeptical of an idea at first. Once they realize that their audience likes it, Fox comes around. There is no view too wild for them if it's what the viewers want. It's one of the key lessons we've learned from these filings in Dominion's case against Fox. There is nothing too out there, nothing too extreme, nothing too dangerous. If the base likes it, the base gets it, because Fox knows where their bread is buttered. Unfortunately, their base does seem to have an almost bottomless desire for the most authoritarian reactionary views. But while the leadership at Fox is willing to cater to their audience's every destructive whim, they do not really know these people at like a personal, tangible level. I mean, Rupert Murdoch, right? This is the guy we're talking about. He runs the whole thing, chairman of the News Corp, master of the entire Fox empire. This guy is the furthest thing possible from the average Fox viewer. Just listen to how he talks about the people who watch his news network.
It's really given comfort and voice to the big conservative, the normal American conservative, working class people, particularly people in the countryside. They love it.
Ah, yes, the working class people in the countryside that he looks down on from his private jet. I mean, all he's missing there is a top hat and a monocle. Rupert Murdoch may never have spent a single minute with the average red state rural Trump voter or Fox viewer, but he's well aware that his network depends on them. And his and the network's awareness of the precariousness of that relationship means Fox is in a constant push and pull with its right-wing audience and the Republican Party as a whole. Now, the Dominion filings give us a bunch of examples of this. Here's one. So in an email, Rupert Murdoch sent Fox News CEO Suzanne Scott, who, by the way, should be a bit more famous, I think, just a couple weeks after the 2020 election. He writes, quote, "See today's piece in the Journal about Newsmax," referring to an article in the Wall Street Journal, another publication owned by Murdoch, reporting that pro-Trump viewers were leaving Fox in favor of the far-right network in the wake of the election. Now, of course, at that time, the reason they were doing that was clear. Newsmax was promoting Trump's big lie much more than Fox. Murdoch continued, quote, "These people should be watched, if skeptically. Trump will concede eventually, and we should concentrate on Georgia, helping any way we can. We don't want to antagonize Trump further, but Giuliani, take him with a large grain of salt. Everything at stake here." Can I just say something for a second before I get back to the script here? Nothing. What is at stake? How old is Rupert Murdoch's worth billions of dollars? This is what's so crazy about all these people. They're all so rich. They're all so powerful. What are you scared of? They're all so desperate. Now, Murdoch seems almost equally concerned about his audience going to Newsmax and about the outcome of the next big races, the runoff Senate elections in Georgia. And also, that makes sense. This is, I think, genuine. This is not like a shtick from Murdoch. It's who he is. Fundamentally, Fox News is both a money-making project and a political one. It's both. It's been that way since its conception by Murdoch and longtime right-wing political operative Roger Ailes, seen here with his former boss, Richard Nixon. Together with Murdoch, who is a dyed-in-the-wool reactionary, who has used his media influence across 3 continents to attack liberalism, Ailes built a network that actively colludes with one political party and movement. And now Fox News fundamentally works to its core, woven into its DNA, as a propaganda wing of the conservative movement of the Republican Party. And that goes well beyond what you already know from just watching their air. I mean, there's host Sean Hannity speaking at a Trump campaign rally, okay, in 2018. It's even worse behind the scenes. And one of the most remarkable, damning revelations to come out of the Dominion filings is that during Trump's 2020 campaign, Rupert Murdoch provided Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner with Fox confidential information about Biden's ads along with debate strategy. He's working for the campaign. And it seems to indicate that Fox, okay, the business Fox, right, is selling advertising space to the Biden campaign. Again, we don't know for sure, but it looks like what it is, and then turning around, taking that proprietary information about those ads that were given to them as a business to the rival campaign and giving the Trump campaign debate advice. And of course, now that Republicans are back in power in the House, the collaboration's going both ways, right? They're partners. It's the same entity. Last week, Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave Fox host Tucker Carlson exclusive access to surveillance footage from the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, footage which is publicly owned. Like, it's the people's property. But Tucker's going to get it. Maybe it will help the stock price. When we say that Fox is not a news network, this is what we mean. There's nothing like this in American politics. There's just nothing like it. Sui generis. They operate as a part of the same entity as the conservative movement, the Republican Party, as a propaganda arm of both.